All right, we're going to start in Ecclesiastes 12. That's not where we're going to be for the most of the message, but if you want to start turning there, Ecclesiastes 12. And as you're doing that, my name again is Curt Lamansky. I serve with Pacific Rim Missions International. If you have not already signed up for our prayer letter and our updates, and would like to, there's a clipboard in the back. You can put your name and email address on that. If you would like to know a little bit more about our mission and our ministry and what we're doing, if you're interested potentially in supporting us individually, there's also packets back there. You can grab one of those on your way out. All right. Ecclesiastes. What goes through your mind when the pastor starts with that? We're going to be in Ecclesiastes. I did a series a number of years ago at our church. It's called Emmanuel Bible Church in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, through the entire book. And when I told our leaders that I was going to do Ecclesiastes, they kind of did a, huh? Like, what? We did Leviticus too, and they were like, what? All right. So anyway, this book is at first rather perplexing. It's very difficult. But once you understand what Solomon's doing here, it opens up and makes so much sense. So what we're going to look at today are the first two chapters, mostly are the first two chapters. And in those first two chapters, Solomon is challenging all of us with this thought. What are you doing? Who are you living for? Do you have a mission? Are you serving me, the Lord, missionally? Or are you serving yourself? We're going to see that Solomon in the first two chapters is going to give us 7 different options that he all tested like a scientist in a laboratory to see if any of those options would bring the pleasure in life or the satisfaction to life that he was hoping to get out of them. And I'll just give you a hint. The first 6 attempts to find satisfaction out of different aspects of life all failed. You'll see this. But the 7th one is the one that truly brought Solomon the happiness in his soul, the shalom in his soul that he was seeking. And so I'll be asking you through his words all the time through this message, where are you looking for that happiness that we all want? God has placed that within our souls. There's an emptiness there, a hollowness there, and it can only be filled in one way. So how are you trying to fill it? Now, before we go over to the first 2 chapters, let's start in the only part of the book that pretty much everyone gets, because this is not hard. Go to chapter 12 if you're not already there, and we'll look at the last 2 verses. Chapter 12, verses 9 through 14 are pretty easy to understand. No confusion. So verse 13, here's his conclusion. The end of the matter. All has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is and then the next word is whole. We could talk all hour about that concept of whole. This is what the wisdom literature, Proverbs, Psalms, Ecclesiastes, the Sermon on the Mount is wisdom literature, essentially. The book of James and so forth. They're all talking about the whole. Is your soul divided or is it whole? Okay. Oh, I want to jump off and go on down that road, but let's not. All right, so this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing whether good or evil. Again, I'd love to jump off the track and run down this idea of the secret thing. Here's what Solomon means by secret thing. He's saying not what's on the outside that people can see, but what's on the inside. Jesus says, if your righteousness is not greater than the Pharisees, you don't belong to me. Well, that's scary. I mean, you talk about righteous people, man, they tithe their dill and cumin, the little seeds out of their garden. That you can't hardly excel their righteousness externally. And Jesus isn't condemning their external righteousness. What he's saying is, if we aren't also internally what we are externally, for out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks, then we don't belong to Jesus. So the Pharisees are all about the external, looking good in others' eyes and so forth. What Jesus is about is the heart. And what Solomon calls the secret thing. In the judgment, it talks about judgment right here in this verse, right before a secret thing. In the judgment, God is going to reveal not only what everyone else could see and rehearse that, but also what was going on inside. So, is our heart matching our outside? So this is the crux of the book. That's the punchline, if you will, of the book. That's not the theme of the book, but it is where the book is headed. So no one confuses that last part. What's the book about? All right, turn to chapter 6, verse 9. And what I'm about to say, I have stolen from an author. Okay, so this is not original with me. Probably the best Old Testament theology ever written is by a man named Bruce Waltke. So anytime I preach from a book in the Old Testament, he's one of the sources that I always consult. Okay, so I'm reading Waltke years ago on Ecclesiastes, and I mean, he was just blowing me away with the precision and complexity with which Solomon wrote this book. And if you see in chapter 6, verse 9, the last line, he writes, "This also is vanity and a striving after wind." That's what the book's all about. The vanity of life. Well, thanks a lot, Curt. That's just what I wanted to hear today. At least it's not Monday. Of course, tomorrow's a day off for some of us, so that maybe you can handle it tomorrow too. But Mondays are usually kind of draggy. Well, here's what Solomon's saying. If we want to put it in our own words, life is junk. He's driving this home for us all through the book. Life is garbage. Life is trash if we're not living on mission. If the seventh option at the end of chapter 2 isn't what we're about. If we're going after one of the other 6 options, then he's been there, he's done that, he's tested all these other ways to try to get pleasure, and the conclusion to each one of them, as we're going to see as we go through them, is, oh, junk. I've wasted my time. So the whole book is about this line. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. Before this line, that's literally the bullseye center of the book. Before this line, there are exactly 1,491 words in Hebrew. After that line, there are exactly 1,491 words in Hebrew. When you want to talk about precision, there are exactly 111 Hebrew verses before that line and the same exact number after that line. I could go on. It's absolutely stunning. Okay, so those are some interesting facts. It shows us that Solomon, in incredible complexity, wrote this book. And it's fun to talk about those things, and I nerd out on them, but let's get to where the rubber meets the road in our lives and what we need to live today and this week. And that's going to be taken from Ecclesiastes chapters 1 and 2. As I said earlier, Solomon is saying throughout the book, been there, done that. You know, how does life work? When my kids, turned about 10, I started talking with them like this. Phil, Drew, Tony, and then Beth. Phil, when you turn, about 14, here's what's going to happen for 3 to 4 years. You're going to begin to think at about 14 that you know more than Dad and Mom. And then, as another year goes by, you're going to be pretty sure that you know a lot more than Mom and Dad do. I mean, after all, you know more about how to run a phone than Dad does. If you don't even know how to do that with your phone or electronics, then come on, what do you really know? You're going to think that you know kind of it all. This is a phase that we go through. These phases are found within the book of Ecclesiastes. Solomon is an old man now when he's writing his conclusions to the matter. All right, so, what happens after that 14 to 17? So, well, man, you get about 18 up through 25, and your respect for your parents that you had lost kind of starts growing. You hit 18 and you're like, well, maybe Dad and Mom know a little bit. You hit 20, 22, 25, and you're like, oh, yeah. How foolish was I when I was 16, man? I thought I knew it all. And man, Mom, Dad, they have so much wisdom. All right, but what else is happening in that 18 to 25 bracket? There is this desire, and it is often a passion with young people, to solve the world's problems. Especially in a university. A bunch of students will get together and they are, they form a pact or a group, or they go on a march, or they do a sit out of class or whatever it might be. Why? Because they're trying to solve one or multiple of the world's problems. A young person that age has it in mind that the world's problems can be solved. And then you go on, 25 to 45, and many are trying to make a name for themselves. During that stage, it's like it can become more independent me, and if I do this or that, and whatever, I make a name for myself. That phase, and that's probably the longest of all the phases. And then 45, usually by about 50, what's the next phase? In America, we even have a name for it. What do we call it? Midlife crisis. Okay, so we have midlife crisis, and what happens? Well, that naivety of that 18 to 25, I can solve the world's problems, and the naivety of that 25 to 40 or so period where I'm going to make a name for myself pretty soon, around those 40s era, 50, you realize I'm still a nobody. I don't really matter. I mean, I matter in a few people's lives, but what I was after kinda isn't really that good. And then what happens? Then I think we start getting into, now, with the wisdom of Solomon, you can do what I'm about to say when you're 18. Without the wisdom of Solomon, you probably go through these phases. And then, midlife crisis, like one of my friends who taught at Northland, I won't say his name, but, he hit about 50, and these things, he kind of realized he was living for the wrong mission, divorced his wife, got a motorcycle. He's had 2 wrecks. He has one of the Dodge Challengers, I think it is, really fast car. I'm like, I won't say his name, but dude, what are you doing? Why are you? When he hit the midlife crisis wall, he hit it hard. Okay, so Solomon's past all this, and he's looking back, and like a scientist in a laboratory, he's been testing life in all kinds of different ways and directions. And he comes to this conclusion, like there's only one mission that we ought to be living for, and one way through that mission to actually find satisfaction in this life. There's only one way where the secret things, the hidden things, will match the outward things. So what is that? What are we living for? What are you living for this morning? Life will, there we go, just tap it. Life will only provide satisfaction if we have a mission. So where are we looking to find satisfaction? In the first 2 chapters of Ecclesiastes, Solomon gives us 7 options to choose from. Number 1, living entirely for myself. Go to chapter 1, let's read the first 3 verses. The words of the preacher, and I like that translation. Solomon is really preaching in this book. The son of David, king in Jerusalem. There's no doubt in my mind that Solomon is the author of this book. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. It's like I almost want to apologize, at the beginning here, like, oh my goodness, vanity of vanity. Hey, this is what I think I need to hear about every single day. As a reminder, vanity, life's vanity, life is trash. Your life is trash. My life is trash if we aren't living it with the right purpose or for the right person. So he asks a question, and this question then starts the book. It's kind of like the trigger that sends us, moving throughout these various verses. Here it is, verse 3. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? Put another way, your choice determines the outcome of your life. What are you choosing to do, or for whom are you choosing to live? Are you building your kingdom or God's kingdom? This is option 1, living entirely for self. Second option that Solomon has tried is to, number 2, live to build his own legacy. Living to build my legacy. Verse 4. A generation goes and a generation comes. In English, we usually flip the come and, the go and the come. A generation comes and a generation goes. They're here and then they're gone. Life is but a vapor, a little wisp of steam off the top of your coffee in the morning. That's all it is. Life will be gone like that. But the earth remains forever. And I think when he says earth here, he's showing the repetitiveness and the short amount of time that various functions of the earth do. We'll read that in a second. Opposed to or versus the fact that the earth remains forever, that is that God's domain and what he's doing here goes on, even though the people who live under his domain just kind of come and go and come and go and come and go and come and go. So how does he illustrate this distinction between the shortness of life and the eternality of his rule and his way on planet Earth? Well, verse 5, the sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. That's repetitive. What the sun does every day is repetitive. You say, oh man, sun doesn't rise or go down. We still say that today. And I know, that's not how it actually happens, because it's actually planet Earth that is rotating, but this is the way we use language. Sunrise will be at 6 whatever in the morning. Sunset will be at 8 something tonight. Okay, well, that's how we talk. This is how he talked. All right, so it's repetitive. Verse 6, the wind blows to the south goes around to the north, around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. Just like the sun coming up and going down, so the wind is repetitive. May even be talking a little bit about the jet streams that I think Solomon understood to a degree. Then verse 7, the streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. So God's control of the earth goes on, even though the natural features of the earth that he made have a repetitive nature. Now let's keep going. Not only is there repetition in nature, in spite of the eternality of God's rule, but there's even repetition in the way people think and act. So verses 8 through 9, 8 and 9, talk about what a person says, then sees, hears, and does. What Solomon's going to say is it's all repetitive. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it, what a man says. Second, the eye is not satisfied with seeing. What a person sees is repetitive. Nor the ear filled with hearing. What a person hears is repetitive. What has been is what will be. And what has been done is what will be done. What a person does is repetitive. Into verse 9, there is nothing new under the sun. That doesn't mean that there can't be a new invention. Solomon's saying that when it comes to the way the planet functions and the way people function, there is so much repetitiveness. And now, the conclusion to this second point, verses 10 and 11, is there a thing which it is said, see, this is new? Nah. It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of latter things yet to be among those who come after. A generation comes and a generation goes. What's his point? Let me illustrate it. I was, back in January, I was with my in-laws in their house. They live on, well, anyway. So I'm walking down the hallway, their main hallway that connects all the bedrooms to the rest of the house. And the first picture on the wall, on my right, is my wife and me on our wedding day. Next picture is her sister and my brother-in-law. And then it's her parents. That's as far as I can go. And then there are other pictures of people whom I don't know. Now, obviously, my wife is related to them, but I don't know who they are. It's not like there's any malice here, but I don't have a clue. They're forgotten. And this is Solomon's point. If we're trying to build our name, our legacy, if it's about us. Pastor Dave, what was the title to the first sermon at the conference you're going to? How to be a weaker pastor? See, that's so right on with what Solomon's saying. It's not about the big bad missionary or the big pastor build a name and no, it's about our Savior we were singing about earlier. There's no remembrance of former things. So if we're trying to build our kingdom, we're doing something that's never going to last and that's not actually going to give us the happiness and satisfaction we all want. So let's move on. Third option that Solomon gives us that he's already tried was living in search of utopia. Now I'm going to, just for sake of time, I'm going to go more quickly through this one, but especially want to draw draw your eyeballs to verse 15 because this is where it's most clear what he's saying here. Utopia. Who wants utopia? Don't raise your hands. I mean, like, who in the world wants utopia? Or what are some forms of utopia, or at least attempts to get there? I mean, when I think of utopia, I'm thinking of the Jewish German philosopher Karl Marx, okay? Founder of, well, at least of philosophically, of communism. Communism was the search for utopia, the engineering, or at least the attempt to engineer utopia. Problem was, it doesn't work. You can't make it work. Why? Because if people aren't getting reward for their work, then they get really lazy. I have books I can tell you. I mean, it's like, not everyone, but most. Yeah, it doesn't work. Oh, man, Star Trek. No money. I mean, look at the underlying philosophy of Star Trek, and I'm not slamming Star Trek. I'm just saying, look at the underlying philosophy. It's communism. They've reached utopia. They're so, not that everything's perfect, but it's kind of close. All right, now here's the thing. Why communism or socialism or why Star Trek and all these other okay. Why are there rebellions on campuses? Because something has happened and students are, on a cause and they're trying to fix it. They want to. Why? Because in all of us, we want utopia. God has made it that way. Adam and Eve had it. Adam and Eve are going to be the only ones in the New Jerusalem who are like in the corner way over on the side and no one's going to want to be on their street. I'm just teasing. It's like, oh, Adam and Eve, why did you do that? Adam and Eve, like they had utopia. And then Genesis 3. So that longing for total soul satisfaction, the whole soul, that, the Makaria, no, I better not. All right, that longing for that, it's in all of us. We all want it. And here's the great news. Jesus wants you to have happiness. That is one of the main things that he's preaching in the Sermon on the Mount. This is one of the main things that Solomon's talking about in this book. Don't waste your life. Instead, follow my advice and you will have perfect happiness. No. Utopia on this side of heaven. No. We aren't going to get to that. But if we are trying, now, we ought to do things. I want to vote. I want to, I want to encourage police officers or military. There are things I want to do to help our system. Be involved maybe in the school board or whatever it might be. Sharing the gospel big time, okay? But there's a difference between being involved in the right way with the right reasons and having an unbeknownst to ourselves, idol of utopia that we're going after. If we're going after the idol of utopia, we're going to be disappointed in a big way. Verse 15, Solomon says it in 2 lines of poetry. What is crooked cannot be made straight. So put an exclamation point in your mind. What is crooked can't be straightened out. You cannot fix this broken world. And if your goal is to fix it, or even any part of it, you will be frustrated. And if your whole life is part of that, then you'll hit the wall at some point in a midlife crisis kind of scenario. Now, do we want, for the sake of Christ, for his purposes, for the world to be better? Absolutely. And again, we ought to do things. But if our goal is off, it only takes a couple of degrees of a ship's rudder to be off, and they aren't going to make it to their destination. It doesn't seem like they're off, at the beginning of the journey, but boy, will they be way off if they're crossing a big body of water. Same thing in our lives. What are we working for, serving? What are we doing? Second part of this line, verse 15, and what is lacking cannot be counted. There is so much lack in the world. You can't count it all. Put another way, There is never enough in this world. You're never going to feed all the hungry. Okay, so that's just like one idea. There are a whole litany of things that we could talk about in this second part of this packed idea. You cannot fix this broken world. The curse is on it. We cannot. Only Jesus can fix this broken world. And it won't even be fully fixed in the millennium. We could talk about that. It will be fixed after the entire universe is dissolved, 2 Peter 3, Revelation 21, 1 and 2. It'll all be dissolved into what is going to happen. According to Revelation 21, Jesus will speak a word, and the entire universe will be remade without the curse of sin. Not until then will there be the Eden-like utopia that we all want, because God made us that way. It's coming. But if our goal is to create that here, we're going to be frustrated. All right. Goal number 4, or option number 4. Where are we looking to find satisfaction? What mission are we on in life? Whose kingdom are we building? Whose name are we promoting? What are we living for? Option number 4, living entirely for myself, living to build my legacy, my name, living in search of utopia. Now, this one's it's gonna hit all of us, I'm just sure. Living to indulge my flesh. In America, this looks as follows. Looks like this. I want to have comfort and ease. I want to bubble around my life so that I have 0 trials, 0 pain, or at least very, very little. I want to do everything I can to create my perfect little bubble world. And we have enough money and access to good health care that most of the world doesn't have, that it helps us kind of create this fake bubble world. If I can I've got to raise my kids in just such a way that they never sin, at least in a big way, and never embarrass me. I've got to have the perfect husband. Oh, he's not perfect. Well, I've got to read another book that what do I have to do to get him that way? Or the perfect wife. Oh, what do I need to say? Why isn't she perfect? Well, why aren't my kids perfect? Why aren't my friendships? I thought I was going to get more from my friends or from the people at church. I don't feel like I'm even loved at church. Now, no one's going to say that, right? But I don't know why. Maybe there's another church over on the other side of town or in another, place that there, I'm sure it's got to be better than here. All right. Bubble world. And again, that's kind of going back to that utopia a little bit, but moving on to option number 4. So Solomon tried every one of these 8 parts to option 4. Tried 8 ways to indulge his flesh. And as we read down through this, we'll see how scientifically he went about it. I said in my heart, chapter 2, verse 1, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself." When you were 8 years old, you hopped off the side of the pool into the deep end for the first time. Okay. This is what Solomon does here. Now, scientifically, but with much wisdom, he's going to analyze. He's going to jump off into the deep end in 8 different ways, all ways of the flesh, to see if any of them slakes the soul thirst that he has. We sang, or did we read the psalm about the deer and panting for the water? So, that longing in the soul. Have a really hard day, at work. Oh, the boss. Oh, internally. I can't even imagine going to work again tomorrow. Ugh. Man, tonight I need a break from reality. I need a break from life. I need a break from a very close relationship because it's a little bit difficult or very difficult or even toxic. And yet I can't get out of this relationship, or it's a relationship I just have to have. And okay, so what do I do then to try to up the relief in my soul? I need relief. Okay, here are 8 different ways you could go about it. So come now, he says, I will test scientifically the idea of pleasure. I'm going to jump off into the deep end. I'm going to enjoy myself. And then he gives you the conclusion up front before he even gets started. He says, but behold, this also was vanity. Every one of these fleshly indulgences were, in the end, vanity. They were garbage. They didn't work. It didn't bring to Solomon what he hoped to get out of them. Squeeze it, no matter how much, it didn't give him the result that he looked for. Verse 2, I said of laughter. That's the first of 8. Of laughter, it is mad. And of pleasure, what use is it? So Solomon, richest man who's ever lived on the planet, estimates based on what's revealed, especially in 1 Kings, is that Solomon had something approaching $4 trillion worth of wealth. So Elon Musk is just he's chump change by comparison. Seriously, like Elon Musk isn't even close to what Solomon had. Not only that, but he is king over the most prosperous time in Israel's history. The greatest extent of the kingdom is under his rule. I mean, we're talking about, he had everything. And so he's bringing in the best comedians possible. And he's going to test comedy. Can I get some relief from my misery by jokesters? Didn't work. All right, what else? Verse 3, and this is the way so many people in our world are trying to slake the pain, trying to deaden the pain of the soul. Verse 3, I searched in my heart how to cheer my body with wine. My heart's still guiding me with wisdom, so he's doing it scientifically with wisdom. How to lay hold on folly till I might see what is good for the children of man to do under the... Okay, so in other words, I tried a little bit of wine and then I went to the folly stage. I mean, I just got flat out drunk and did it again and again and again. Whether it's wine or whether it's drugs, will alcohol or drugs deaden the pain of the soul? Why are there, I think, more bars and taverns in the state of Wisconsin than there are churches? We have, of the 20 drunkest counties in the United States, 11 of those are in the state of Wisconsin. There are so many bars and things in our... Why? Well, that kind of takes the place of church. I go and I hang out with my buds and I get a buzz, or maybe worse, get drunk, and you give some relief. And then you wake up the next morning and it's just all back to work. And then this thing spirals, and alcohol causes depression, and drugs are even worse because you take drugs and the dopamine in your brain, in your neural synapses, that gets fired extra during the drug time, and then when you come down off the drugs, then there's very little dopamine left, so you take a little bit larger dose, and it gives you more, and then that goes down, and pretty soon you're strung out because there's no dopamine left. What God intended for the communication of the nerves is completely gone. Drugs are not, alcohol is not going to bring us the relief from a difficult, fill in the blank, relationship, a marriage, a difficult... you've got an employee maybe who works for you, and it's just like all of them, they just don't see, if they would just work and do what they're supposed to do. I'm paying them all this money, and I just can't take it. Go home and kind of, lose it for a little bit during the night. It doesn't work. All right, another means of the flesh. Verse 4, I made great works. I built houses and vineyards for myself. So he builds houses, and David's palace was down a little bit south of the Temple Mount. Solomon's palace was, I don't know if it's 4 times as big as David's that he built, but Solomon built this massive palace between David's palace and then Mount Moriah, where the temple was. Huge thing. Okay, so that's just one of the houses that Solomon built. Do any of us, in our heart of hearts, we're just like, if I just had a bigger house, if I just had a prettier place, the better curb appeal, nicer internal fixtures, my bathroom needs remodel. Now look, if a bathroom needs remodel, there's nothing wrong with remodeling it. If you need a bigger home, sure, hopefully you can get one. But there's a difference between needing shelter and wanting that shelter to look nice versus a lot of my daydreaming, my meditation, my free time being, if I could just get the house. And so from the moment you wake up till the time you go to bed, it's about, now, young men, I see some young men in here. Maybe for you it's not a house, it's the truck. Oh, what happens with the truck? Well, dude, I get my big truck, and, I finally, of course, I've got big payments, too, with the big truck, but I'm driving downtown, going to the parking lot at school, or if you're homeschooled, you in church or whatever, just going down and everybody look at me. So that lasts for about a week or two, right? And then you're in the Walmart parking lot and somebody dings your door, because your life's about the truck. And then it's supposed to be off-wheel, four-wheeling, and you get stuck. You're like, oh no. It's just like pretty soon there's dirt and dust in the cab, and then there's some scratches, and then there are still the big payments, and all the shine, if you will, off that truck that you wanted so badly has faded. Parents, you on Christmas Day, your child opened the present and they played with it for an hour, and then it's been in the toy box ever since. Like, they wanted that, that's what they kept asking for, and they haven't played. Okay, so the truck and the toy, these are illustrations of our heart. We're all like this. This is how we're all given to our wanter. If I can turn that into a noun, our wanters could just get dialed way up to the point where it's an idol of the heart. And Solomon's saying, I've tried the big house. I've done not just the houses, but the lands, the fourth means of the flesh. I built houses and vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks. I planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. Number 5 here, male and female slaves. I bought male and female slaves. Now, I'm not favorable, of course, towards slavery, but whether you call it a slave or a servant, Solomon had lots of them. Did he find what he wanted by being waited on hand and foot? Would be kind of nice if I didn't have to iron or, do any dishes or, pick up my clothes. It would be kind of nice. So, in our world today, this is a true story. It's from a book on King Charles of England. All this, if the book is accurate, then this is true. King Charles will not do anything that is of menial labor. It is, in his mind, beneath him. He will not, one of the things in the book, he will not put toothpaste on his toothbrush. That's beneath him. So he has a servant put the toothpaste on the toothbrush. I don't know how many times he brushes his teeth, but every time. Now, according to this book, King Charles, if the toothpaste is not exactly on the toothbrush like he wants it, will come utterly unglued and rail at the servant who didn't do it right. You say, wow, that is just like the height of arrogance and ridiculosity, if there were such a word. Well, before we cast the first stone, it's kind of, I think there's a little bit of that in all of us. In other words, he's trying to find satisfaction in a whole bunch of things that can't provide it, or the thing he seeks for. And so it actually logically kind of makes sense that he would be acting that way, because he's trying to fill that emptiness of the soul with things like being waited on hand and foot, and the wealth and the prosperity and the name and the influence. He needs Christ. It's just that simple. He needs Christ. But again, he's an unbeliever. We're believers. Do we see a little bit of our own reflection in that illustration? Next thing, down in verse 8, I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. So think 401k right here. Brother, you said it a little bit earlier. I was like, oh man, he's like stealing some of my thunder here. Such a good prayer and then challenge at the beginning with the scripture reading. We are so apt to find our security in the things of this world. And Americans, even if we are poor in America, we have things by comparison with the Philippines or India or Myanmar. We have lots of things. We have closets full, maybe they're old clothes, but we have closets full of clothes. I can go on about that, right? So Solomon's like, okay, I built the best 401k that's ever been built. $4 trillion. Did that give him the kind of happiness that he sought? No. In fact, even the treasure of kings and provinces, the beautiful carved or molded, gold and silver and ivory and so on, man, I can display that on my bookshelf. And a whole host of those. Woo, people will come on in. Let me show you all the cool things I've collected from my travels or from the people who have come to see me and bow their knee to me as king of Israel. Solomon says, it ain't there. No matter how much money you get. What is it, Rockefeller, Standard Oil, when asked, how much more money do you need? Do you know what he said? Yep, one more dollar. Oh, I just need one more dollar. I was like, what? One more dollar? Yeah, that's what Solomon's saying. No, it's not. Money's not going to do it for you. How about entertainment? I got singers, both men and women. Get home from a long day, you just can't hardly take it anymore, and go down to the TV and just like entertain yourself. If I can watch enough movies, it'll bring me that. That's what I need. Will movies be able to do that for you? Or is there some other source that really can give you what your soul needs at that point? And then finally, number 8, concubines, wives, women. And many concubines, the delight of the children of man. He got the delight. He got the prettiest women from all these surrounding countries. And did that bring him the happiness he sought? No. In fact, what did it do? I mean, right across the Kidron Valley from Mount Moriah and Mount Zion are 3 other mountains. Mount Scopus, that's where Hebrew University's hospital is, the best hospital in Israel. And then you've got the Mount of Olives. We know the Mount of Olives. And then you have the next mountain, the Mount of Desecration. Why is it called that still today? Because that's the mountain where Solomon allowed all of his foreign wives to build their idols to their pagan gods. Solomon allowed that. Still known for that today. Yeah, a lot of concubines, it didn't work. He says, I became great and surpassed all Also, my wisdom remained with me. I never gave up. I'm scientifically testing all this. I didn't hold anything back from anything that my eyes desired, my heart wanted. I jumped all in at 8 years old into the deep end. I jumped in, touched the bottom before swimming back up to get a breath. And it didn't do it for me. I'm going to just mention the next option because very few are going to live for the life of the mind. This is the foolishness of philosophers and scholars. This is chapter 2, verses 12 through 17. In the beginning of verse 16, Solomon says, "For of the wise is of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance." This is the scholar's illusion that by writing something, by speaking in some prestigious conference, that I will be recognized for my brilliance. No scholar will ever find satisfaction if he or she lives to prove his or her brilliance and to be remembered forever for how smart they were. No, won't happen. Living for work is the sixth option. Next to last here. Oh, I forgot to click here. Living for work. Verses 18 through 23. Scan down through these verses with me. I want to point something out. First, the word hated. I hated. He means it. I hated. I hate work is what Solomon's going to say all the way down through here. I hate work. I hated all my. Look at the word toil in verse 18. Couple more words. You see the word toil again. Go to verse 19. Toiled. Go to verse 20. Despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. Verse 21. Toiled. Into verse 21. Toil. Verse 22, what has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow. Are you living for work? All his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation, even in the night. Think of Psalm 127 here. God gives his beloved rest. Well, if you're living for work, then you're not going to have the shalom at soul kind of rest and peace. If you're living for work, then even in the night, his heart does not rest, either because he's working some into the night or because he's worried about, what happened in the previous day or what's going to happen in the next day. Men who are sitting here, women too, but let's focus more on men here. Men, Solomon says, listen up. You're not going to find what you seek by living for work. If your life is dominated, not necessarily your time, because obviously you sleep for 8 hours, you're going to be at work for 8+ hours. You're going to have in the waking time that's not at work is going, it's probably going to be the shortest of the 3 periods of your life, of your day rather. So we're not talking about duration of time. We're talking about personal goal, mission, what we're living for. Is our life primarily about our job? If it is, then it's going to be like Solomon illustrates a number of times through the book. If you're trying to get your satisfaction in life from your job, it's like trying to grab a hold of the wind that's blowing by. You open your hand and it's not like I can grab the wind and then bring it over here and then hit one of my kids in the face with it. And it blows their hair. That's absurd. We know that. Man, if we're living for work and that's dominated and other part of our life so that we're not loving our wives, we aren't spending time with our kids, we're not invested at church, we're not praying for others. It's mostly about work. Solomon says, pretty soon you're going to realize, verse 18, you're going to hate it. It's going to have create that kind of a strong emotional reaction inside, deep down. You're going to hate work. Finally, and with this, we conclude. All right. Man, Lamansky, you've been so stinking negative all day. It's like, man, lift up a bit. I'm tired of getting, the sword of the word to the heart. All right, so here we go. All right, what's our mission? What's going to give us the happiness we seek? It's not going to be living for self. It's not building our legacy or trying to create utopia on this world. It can't be done. It's not living to indulge the flesh. No matter how much you indulge your flesh, you're not going to get out of it. You'll have a tiny pleasure for a season, Hebrews chapter 11, but it'll be fleeting so fast. Living for the life of the mind, not gonna work. You write your book and then people are going to criticize it. And you thought you were going to be recognized and now you're not. Living for work, not going to happen. Maybe for the ladies, living for relationships, trying to create the perfect relationship network. That's, just like trying to live for work, it won't happen. And now, number 7. And this is the book of Ecclesiastes. How do you go from all that to yes? Put like this, the book turns on the hinge of these 3 verses. Here's the awesome news. Look at the first part of verse 25. For apart from him, and the him refers back to God. There it is, friends. Apart from God, life is vanity. It's garbage. Solomon tried all these other options. None of them worked. Only what I'm about to read created that peace inside the soul that we all long for. Verse 24. For there is nothing, now most of you have the ESV, probably some have a different translation. The next words in the ESV are better for. All translations have something like that. All right, now got a little news for you here. Better for is not in the Hebrew manuscripts. There is not one original anywhere that has better for in it. Why is it there then? Because the translators of the ESV and the other translations are trying to figure out what Solomon's saying in verse 24. And I'm going to submit to you that by adding better for, they've literally flipped the very purpose of verse 24 on its head. Okay? I don't think it should read, there is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. I think it's saying the exact opposite. So let me give you Walter Kaiser's translation of this verse. There is nothing in a person that allows him to eat and drink and find enjoyment in his trial or in his toil. There is nothing inherent in a person that allows us to get what we are seeking through the first 6 options. We cannot, in other words, obtain from the things of this world what only God in his person through a relationship can give us. There is nothing inherent, innate in a person that allows him to eat and drink and find enjoyment in his life. Second part of verse 24, this also I saw is from the hand of God. I think that's probably, there are many references to the Garden of Eden and the fall in the book of Ecclesiastes. In fact, through P&R Publishing, there's a whole book just on those connections. Okay, this is probably one of them. In other words, Solomon says here at the end of verse 24, God made it that way in Genesis 3 because of the curse. Everything prior to that was utopia. Nothing after that can be. God made it that way. This is from the hand of God. And so with that, verse 24 correctly understood, now verse 25. This is the beauty. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given, 3 words, wisdom, knowledge, and yes, joy. Go back to the last verse of chapter 1, verse 18. For in much wisdom, 3 words here, wisdom, knowledge, and sorrow. There's wisdom, knowledge, and sorrow, or wisdom, knowledge, and joy. What do you want? Chapter 1, verse 3, what does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? Your choice determines whether you're going to have wisdom, knowledge, and sorrow, or whether you'll have wisdom, knowledge, and joy. And it all hinges on those 4 words, I think the 4 most important words in Ecclesiastes, for apart from him. You will find joy in the aforementioned 6 options. Well, not entirely in all of them, but depending on which option we're talking about and how we're talking about it, there actually is joy in writing a book for the kingdom, the scholar. There is joy in what we eat and drink or in our house. That's not wrong to have a nice house or a nice truck. It's not wrong to be wealthy. As long as the wealth isn't clouding our perspective and robbing us from the one who we should be serving with God. So apart from him, those first 6 options lead to misery, to hate, to vanity. With him, those 6 options properly balanced in our lives bring at least some appropriate level of satisfaction. Our kids are walking with the Lord, all 4 of them. There is satisfaction in my soul for that. Now, that could easily become, say, pride, or I could so focus on that if they did do something dumb, then it hurt me inside. Hopefully that isn't the case. But apart from him, we're not going to have any enjoyment from eating and drinking. Not really. With him, we will. So, verse 26, for to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom, knowledge, and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to the one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after a wind. Pursue Christ rather than pleasure, and all pleasure will produce satisfaction. All right, that's kind of a hard. Last time I came, it was a really uplifting message. This one, kind of hard-hitting. So why preach a hard-hitting message when you're a missionary? Because Solomon is talking about mission. He's talking about life. He's talking about the very thing that I'm doing. Why would I not share the gospel with my neighbor or coworker? It's because I don't want the bubble of joy that I'm trying to concoct around my life to get popped by somebody who's going to think negatively of me or maybe even verbally attack me or make my job at work even harder than it already is because I shared the truth with them. That's why we don't share the gospel. This is why we don't live on mission, is because we're trying to create a world that really can't exist. So live life on mission, and we will find much satisfaction. Father, this morning, We do praise your name for